the Agile brand.
Welcome to Season 6 of the Agile brand, where we discuss marketing technology and customer experience trends, insights, and ideas with enterprise and technology platform leaders. We focus on the people, processes, data, and platforms that make brands successful, scalable, customer-focused, and sustainable. This is what makes an Agile brand. I'm your host, Greg Kihlstrom, advising Fortune 1000 brands on MarTech, marketing operations, and CX, best-selling author and speaker. The Agile Brand Podcast is brought to you by TEKsystems, an industry leader in full-stack technology services, talent services, and real-world application. For more information, go to teksystems.com. Now let's get on to the show. AI itself isn't a goal. In the enterprise, marketers that effectively integrate artificial intelligence into their operations in meaningful ways will start to see the tangible returns that leaders in this space are already realizing. Today, we're going to talk about the reality of AI adoption in the enterprise and how marketers should be thinking about a workplace where humans and AI agents are working together. To help me discuss this topic, I'd like to welcome Adam Brotman, co-founder and co-CEO at Forum3. Adam, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk to you.
Yeah, looking forward to this. Yeah, and I caught you at MAYCON this year in Cleveland, and a lot of what you were saying resonated, and just wanted to get you on the show and share some of what you were talking about with my audience as well. And to that end, why don't we start with you giving a little background on yourself and what you're currently doing?
Yeah, so my background is kind of varied. I mean, if you go all the way back, I've been an entrepreneur in digital, or an operator and executive in digital my whole career. And I'd say, the most pertinent elements of my background for this talk are, I was chief digital officer at Starbucks for about 10 years, where my team and I led the mobile app and loyalty program and mobile ordering and payment and whatnot. And then I went off to J.Crew as president and chief experience officer there, and worked on loyalty and technology and consumer experience and marketing. And so those are kind of some key elements of my background. I come, though, even before that, with a bunch of entrepreneurial things I've done, but always sort of in the consumer brand, either marketing or digital innovation arena, and whether I'm an entrepreneur or an operator. And then I a couple of years ago, had the opportunity to go into business with a good friend of mine, Andy Sack, and who's like the smartest guy I've ever met. Other than maybe Bill Gates, who we interviewed for, which we'll talk about in a minute. But so Andy and I have always wanted to go into business together. We've been friends for over 20 years. And we decided to really take the combination of our careers, which has been all about helping consumer brands embrace and navigate the latest technology. And we thought, oh my God, we have to do that now, considering the kinds of technology that's coming around the corner towards us, especially AI. So we found we really have focused our company, Forum3, on helping consumer brands with, how do they get the most out of AI and become an AI first enterprise, to help them with growth and innovation and productivity. And that's what Forum3's mission is all about. And we're writing a book, and we're doing a bunch of other things in that regard.
Great. Well, yeah, we're gonna talk about a few things, but I do want to start by talking about the book that you just mentioned you're co-writing with Andy Sack. I believe there's a collaboration with Harvard Business Review in there as well. So why don't you talk a little bit? What's the premise of the book, and talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, the book is being published by Harvard Business Review or Harvard Business Press. Andy and I are writing it, and we actually just finished writing it.
Oh, nice. Congrats.
Yeah. Thank you. About a week ago. And nice. A couple of interesting things to note about the book. The book is called AI First. It was originally provisionally titled Our AI Journey. Harvard Business Review, when our editor approached us, when Harvard Business Review approached us about the book, we collaborated with Harvard on a couple of elements. We decided to make it not just your everyday book about AI, because if you did that, you could end up with a book that's outdated by the time it even hits the bookstore shelves. So we decided to make it a project with a community, have it be a serialized book. I believe Harvard Business Review's first ever book that they're allowing us to release every chapter as it comes out, and in conjunction with a community of readers that are able to sort of have conversations with Andy and I about the book and questions they have. And it's helped inform the direction of the book. That being said, the book itself, like I mentioned, is about our learning journey in around Gen AI. And I can give you more details, but essentially we were able to publish and research this journey and talk to some of the best AI leaders in the world. Sam Altman, Mustafa Suleyman, Reid Hoffman, Bill Gates. There's a lot of people we've talked to on the technology side. Then we also talked to, in research for the book, dozens, if not almost 100 different business leaders around what they're experiencing from the business perspective. The book sort of wrote itself in the sense that it became about us publishing what we were learning real time from the perspective of a business leader, entrepreneur, brand builder, which is how we sort of see ourselves. And that's we think that's the audience for the book. And we try to effectively come up with a playbook and a way to think and a framework for how business leaders and marketers should tackle this, amazing, fast moving topic of AI.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, you've talked with some, definitely some of the leaders, thought leaders in AI, and you could say business in general, for this book, and had quite a few conversations. What was the biggest surprise that you encountered in that process?
The biggest surprise was actually, as we were talking to these AI leaders, the nature of Gen AI is so different than any other software before it, even any other AI as I had sort of understood it before it, in the sense that the leaders were building towards a vision of a very generalized, very powerful AI system. Yeah. And they weren't doing so with a particular outcome for business in mind. Normally, you think about software like Salesforce or Photoshop or Office or Word or, you name it, our social media platforms, any software we've ever used or developed in our life, it was always sort of built with a vision and a purpose in mind. In the case of AI, what was so surprising was that the research labs and the companies that are building it are building towards this very general purpose system, and it doesn't come with a user manual either. Right. So you have to sort of figure out yourself how you're going to use this and how it can be used and what it's good at, what it's not good at. And that was the biggest surprise. I mean, the first couple of months, I remember just having to sort of process that. Andy and I both had to sort of process that and then come up with, okay, given that, how you have to kind of make your own user guide and your own playbook for how to incorporate it.
Yeah. I mean, in that way, it reminds me a little bit about, early days of the internet. I mean, certainly there was a purpose for it, scientific research purpose for it originally back in the day or whatever, but there wasn't a clear playbook, in 1997 or something like that as to exactly how we were all going to tackle the web. Do you see similarities there as well?
I do. In fact, I think that's a really good example, because it's actually very analogous to the internet or even computing. Yeah. So as opposed to, so there's a blend that's happening now between software and computing and intelligence. And so you end up with this, it's very similar to the computer revolution, I guess you could say, of the 70s and 80s, primarily, the PC revolution. And, you think about Steve Jobs, and he would talk about the bicycle, how computers are personal computers can be thought of like a bicycle for the mind. You think about Bill Gates thinking about a PC on every desk. There was an element of, this is just a general purpose utility, and that's how I think AI is sort of emerging like another one of those mega, capabilities.
Yeah. It's the scaffolding to kind of build other things on, but not necessarily how far can I push this? Maybe not the blueprint for it, right? So
yeah, that's right. The scaffolding in the past, in our experience, has always been it's always been something that's been like literally infrastructure, like hardware or data pipes, like the internet, or protocols. In this case, now it's software, and so that's where it gets really wild, because software has always been kind of handcrafted or deterministic, and for software to have a form of intelligence and utility that is general purpose, that's where things get really accelerated.
And so in a second, I want to talk more about AI readiness in the enterprise. But one thing I would just want to get back to, as far as the medium that you chose to write about this. And, I've written a few books myself, and certainly sometimes people wonder why we're writing books when things change, or at least writing books about things that change so quickly, like AI and technology and stuff. I've got my own reasons for it, but, just, you mentioned a little bit about the serialized nature being a great way to kind of keep up with some of the rapid pace of change. But, just curious, what drew you to writing a book about this, given what I just, given the fast paced nature of this?
Well, it's a great question, because, I've always been a person who likes to read books, and, hardcover books in particular around business topics and biographies. So I'm biased toward, and I still read books. I mean, on my desk in front of me right now, I've got a book written by Ethan Mollett called Co-Intelligence, a hardcover. These are all hardcovers. A book by Saul Kahn called Brave New Words about Khan Academy and Khanmigo and AI, and then a book about Moderna. So those are the books I've read in the last, couple months. So I've always got kind of a book going. So I was Andy and I were sort of drawn towards this. I will say, though, you're right to point out that we live in a world now where it's all about like the YouTube show and the podcast, to be honest. And then of course, quick, I almost call it entertainment, but quick information flow through TikTok and Instagram and Twitter and whatnot. And so it feels like the book is a weird medium to tackle. The thing I will say is that we were drawn because we were asked to write this book, or invited to write this book by Harvard. And we jumped at the chance because it's still, even in 2024, almost 2025, writing a book still carries, I'll call it, this patina of a quest for knowledge and truth and something more permanent. And so when you go and you say to Bill Gates or a Saul Kahn or a Ethan Mollick or Sam Altman, hey, we're writing a book with Harvard Business Review about AI, that's a great calling card still to have a conversation. Right. So to us, it was great because it opened the door to these conversations that we probably wouldn't have had otherwise, and did it in a way where we could just be authors and journalists of the sort and fact finders, and let our own humility and intellectual curiosity sort of carry the day. And it's with a book that's a little bit easier to do, as opposed to interviewing these folks for other things they might not have said yes to.
Yeah. No, agree. And I do think, again, I could talk about this all day, but I do think there is a permanence to some of these, as much as we want to say things are changing so quickly, there's, the practice of marketing, the fundamentals hasn't fundamentally changed other than the channels we're using and some details and stuff. So, there's business, same thing, there's a lot of things that actually do change. And I think maybe we get distracted sometimes by the rapid pace sometimes.
Yeah. And also the size, you're right. Like, it's interesting, right? Because we could talk about it all day. It's not exactly what you had me on for, but it's interesting because the book is a 50,000 word book about a topic. There's something about it that kind of requires you to sort of have an arc and have something to say, as opposed to a blog post or a essay or a podcast interview.
Yeah, totally. Well, so and maybe, to that end, there is a lot of talk about, and a lot of people are writing and podcasting and all that stuff about AI, but want to talk about how ready the enterprise really is for AI and using it effectively. So, there's certainly a difference between all the talking and doing when it comes to any new technology. I mean, we talked about a few sort of the eras of technology here already. How would you describe the state of enterprise orgs as a whole when it comes to actual AI adoption?
I would say it's still very early days, and generally speaking, the enterprise is not ready. Now, that can rapidly change over the next 2 years, but I'd say that probably out of 100 companies right now, there's maybe 5 that are just on it and doing what they should be doing and are taking the steps they should be taking. The other 95% are not, and that doesn't mean they're not doing anything, but they're just being what we have found is that there's not really a sense of AI literacy at the executive team level. And that really is a problem, because if you don't have executive sponsorship and a vision for what it means to be an AI first company, then it's going to be really hard for the enterprise to be ready and do what it needs to do, because you really have to invest right now as a company in getting your team, broadly speaking, maybe everybody, all your knowledge workers or your team, literate and proficient, and then clear on how they should be thinking about AI, and really being able to sort of have the freedom to experiment and innovate around the AI to basically bring them all the benefits, which are productivity gains and a qualitative improvements in their business and innovation. And most companies right now, because the executive teams aren't where they need to be, I think it ends up you have this sort of negative trickle down effect on the rest of the organization. And that includes things like, what it leads to is a lot of organizations where there's a very unevenly distributed usage of AI and attitude towards AI, and frankly, probably a lot of use of AI that's happening undercover, where a lot of workers are just sort of bringing their personal AIs through, a personal ChatGPT use to the table, but they're not talking about the fact they're doing it. They might not be as careful as they should be about confidentiality and privacy. And mostly they're not really able to truly innovate on behalf of the organization, because there's, probably a lot of, secretive use of the AI happening right now because of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I read some stat, this was months ago at this point, there's some large percentage of employees, as you were alluding to, that are kind of using it in secret. I mean, there's always, it seems like there's one scenario or the other in that, I call it like the friend or foe scenario, is like either the leaders they're very in favor of AI because they think they can lay off a bunch of people and still get the same amount of work done. Or there's the employees that are very in favor of AI because they think they can get away with doing a lot less work and keep their jobs and stuff like that. I think that aside, being a little facetious, but that aside, it sounds to me like what you're describing with that 95%, there's a lot of fragmentation, right? And AI works well when it has access to not only lots of data, but a breadth of data, right? Is that, do you think fragmentation is maybe the biggest blind spot for enterprises, or are there other things, other common themes that you're seeing as well?
I would say that the thing that we're seeing is that, and we write about this in the book, and it's really what even our company right now is really focused on this, which is really helping companies, brands, these leaders sort of get a system in place, get a mindset in place, and get a process in place that they can run that allows them to do, a lot of experimentation and effectively sort of build their own lab of an AI lab internally. Because you're talking about the ability to create, if you will, and certainly customize software using natural language. So you've never seen a situation where non-technical people can actually really be innovative using software on their own. And that's really important for companies to be able to facilitate right now, because functional leaders, marketers and, sales leads and all sorts of different functional leaders, they know their business better than anybody. So there's this opportunity to get your functional leaders in your company to get AI proficient and then start figuring out the ways that you can use these frontier AI systems to become really productive and even more so like really innovative, both. And the problem is that if a company, it could be about fragmentation, but it's actually more just the opportunity cost of not experimenting and not having these functional leaders that are very smart about their business and understand like what's going to move the needle. Having those leaders in the trenches pushing on what the company could be doing to take advantage of AI. And so in other words, if you end up in a situation where those leaders aren't doing that, or their teams aren't doing that, and their teams are using AI under the desk, so to speak, if they're doing that, it's fine. They're getting some productivity out of that. It's better than nothing in some respects, possibly, like where they're, AI is helping to make better decisions and helping to write things, but you're missing out on the real opportunity, which is the strategic lift, either through decision-making or the real opportunity to automate some process for productivity or to elevate some customer experience through being able to leverage AI. So those kinds of things I'm mentioning, those strategic automation, experiential uplift, those opportunities come from having a real system in place where the functional leaders can say, okay, I get AI, I get what it can do. Let's make sure we're having this process. And that's what's missing if you're an organization that's not set up right, that's not happening. And if that's not happening, you're kind of lost.
Do you see this as another point in time where the gap between leaders and laggards is going to really put some companies ahead and by that token, really leave some in the dust?
Yeah, hugely. I think so, because we haven't even, and this reason why I said experimentation is so important from the leaders in the organization and in every function, because we're about to see a whole new set of models come out in the next couple of weeks, if not in the next couple of months.
Yeah.
Then you're going to start to see agentic capabilities or agents where AI systems or AI agents are going to be able to start functioning like people and are going to start to be able to interact with one another and interact with humans. And that combination of agentic capabilities and even more capable models, if you're a company that's already experimenting and already thinking about it and pushing your organization, your level of capability, your competitive advantage is going to be, double, triple digit over your competitors. Meaning you're all of a sudden, if you're not doing that stuff, you might just find yourself wondering like, what just happened? Why are my competitors able to out innovate me? They don't need as many resources. They're just going to start running circles around the companies that aren't doing that stuff. And it's going to be kind of shocking, I think, or potentially. I don't want to be over hyperbolic about it, but I do think that we could be in a situation where with another turn of the crank or two from these systems, that the companies that are taking advantage of are going to start to run circles around the ones that aren't. And the ones that aren't, they're going to be 6 months behind because they didn't do the proficiency. They didn't get the AI council. They didn't do the training. They didn't start the experimentation on their own processes. And if you're not doing that now, like 6 months is going to be a lifetime potentially, when your competitors are able to run circles around you.
Yeah. And you mentioned AI agents. I think last topic I really wanted to talk about with you was that I recently interviewed somebody from the Microsoft Copilot team as well, talking about this stuff. And I know you've started a platform called Spock as well, and certainly there's some other like Copilot like things popping up here and there. Are agents the future of AI and humans working together?
I think so. So when we interviewed Reid Hoffman for the book, he was telling us, we asked him, what's the world going to look like even in just like 2 years or 3 years from now? Forget about AGI necessarily. And he said, oh, everyone's going to be interacting with agents all day. And I remember not fully internalizing what he said at the time, because, I understood it intellectually, but I couldn't see it. But then now that I've seen some examples of like what it could look like to have an agent spun up and interacting with other agents, interacting with other humans, and just realizing like, oh yeah, that's like, it really is going to be like a human. And then we as managers and leaders and workers are going to have to really start to think of ourselves as managers of AI systems as much as we are as just functional leaders. And so I do think that that's going to be the future in a lot of ways, in terms of like this idea that you're going to spin up agents that are going to do things, or maybe multiple agents that are going to do things, or maybe you're going to spin up agents that are going to spin up agents.
Right.
And when that can start to happen, and all of a sudden, you're, and if that agent is coming back to you and emailing you or messaging you, and you start to see a world where things could accelerate really quickly. And I do think that is going to be the future of work, is just like being able to manage these systems. In fact, Jensen Huang from NVIDIA was on the BG2 podcast, and he was talking just the other day, and he was talking about how every manager is going to have to sort of be like a CEO and prompt engineer their people and their agents. And so there's going to be this blend of agents and people, and it's all going to happen through natural language prompting. And that's not how we think about doing our jobs today. We think about, you talk to humans and you use software and you try and get results. And it might just become that we need to sort of think of ourselves more as like designers of systems and managers of people and agents. And that, I think that is going to be the future. It's still kind of dystopian science fiction, kind of weird to even say out loud. But I've seen some early examples, as I'm sure you have, of these multi-agent systems running where they're just talking to one another, right? And then they come back to you and you're just like, oh yeah, that's right. They really can. These AI agents can really emulate humans in some ways. And I haven't even gotten used to it, so I'm sure most people haven't either.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely and I've seen some of it, as well. But to your point, we certainly have a tendency to anthropomorphize as humans, I think. So some things about it may be a little easier than others, but I guess with that, Adam, thanks so much for joining today. I guess kind of ending on that note. What does a leader do now? Given what you're talking about, we're going to have this multi-agent scenario. There's already a lot of laggards in this space that's fast moving. What would your advice be to a leader right now? That's feeling like they're already behind. What can they do to kind of try to get ahead?
Honestly, my advice would be to try to get as AI literate and proficient as you can right now, not because it's going to be a silver bullet, but because it really doesn't take that long. I mean, Ethan Mollick, the Wharton professor who's sort of a guru in the space, has suggested that it takes about 10 hours of using AI systems to get really good at prompting and understanding the sort of jagged frontier of what these systems can do and not do. And then I would suggest, as a leader, find a podcast like Paul Reitzer's podcast, the Artificial Intelligence podcast, or something like that. Find a podcast, find a blog, Ethan Mollick's got a good blog with his one useful thing, and start using the systems, get proficient. Because if you do that, you're going to put yourself in a position that takes about a month of getting up to speed, and then stay up to speed. And then depending on your company as a leader, either create a council or join an AI council and start, understand what, your use policies are at your company, or establish those, and then just start experimenting. Because I mentioned the competitive advantage you can give yourself and your company by doing that. You're not too late to start now. You might be in a year from now or in 6 months from now, but you're not too late now. I think the big explosion is going to happen over the next 12 to 24 months. And so there's going to come a point where it's like, oh shoot, I'm a little late, but not yet. Right now, I just encourage everyone to do those things and start playing. And, by the way, one good example of something somebody can do, just to put a plug in, is you could go to Spock.app, and we've got, you can do 1 week free trial. Spock doesn't cost that much money. If you're a marketer, Spock's it will really be a great way for you to learn what's possible with AI as a marketer, because we've already taken some of the guesswork out of how to prompt and put that under the hood of Spock. And so if you try Spock as a marketer, you'll see, wow, I can brainstorm ideas. I can create content plans. I can really understand what my customer segmentation is and what they're searching for. And you can really see how the AI works. So, I would also encourage people to check out Spock.
Absolutely. Well, again, I'd like to thank Adam Brotman, co-founder and co-CEO of Forum3, for joining the show. You can learn more about Adam and Forum3 by following the links in the show notes, and we'll also put a link to Spock and the book in the show notes as well. So make sure to check those out as well. Thanks again for listening to The Agile Brand, brought to you by Tech Systems. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to subscribe and leave us a rating so that others can find the show more easily. You can access more episodes of the show at www.gregkihlstrom.com. That's GregKihlstrom.com. While you're there, check out my series of best-selling Agile Brand guides covering a wide variety of marketing technology topics, or you can search for Greg Kihlstrom on Amazon. The Agile Brand is produced by Missing Link, a Latina-owned, strategy-driven, creatively fueled production co-op. From ideation to creation, they craft human connections through intelligent, engaging, and informative content. Until next time, stay agile.
The Agile Brand.